With the transwarp drive system ready to be tested, Starfleet Command would repurpose the Seltzer class into being its testbed guinea pig. But what do we know about the Seltzer class? Well, today we'll find out. Hello and welcome to another episode of Truth or Myth Beta Canon, a Star Trek web series that dives into the history of any given topic using beta canon sources and my own imagination to fill in the gaps. In today's episode, we're taking a look at the Seltzer class, a contender in the contest to be the USS Excelsior in Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, and first seen in Star Trek: The Next Generation to better understand its place in Star Trek history. Please note, this is one of those designs that, although canon thanks to a blink and you'll miss it type scene in TNG, simply ignited my imagination. In reality, this model was referred to as the alka-celsior class, an in-joke reference to Richard C. Dayton Jr., who built models for some of the alka-celsior TV commercials, and then went on to become the very first Star Trek studio model maker back in 1964. But with very little other information to go on, I tried to create a fun and engaging story that still dives into the canon and beta canon of the failed transwarp drive. I'd also like to give a huge shout out to David Metlesitz, whose 3D model I used as a basis for the one you see here on screen. After a ton of kit bashing and retexturing to bring it to life, I think it turned out pretty well. But as always, because this is just a beta canon video, all information relayed should pretty much be taken with a grain of stardust and only considered a little bit of Star Trek fun. And so, with all that out of the way, let's begin. On stardate 5693.2, the USS Enterprise, under the temporary command of its first officer, Commander Spock, would launch a daring plan to save Captain James T. Kirk from interface space, while at the same time saving the ship from Tholian capture. Though the Enterprise's trip through interface space was a brief one, the data the ship's sensors had recorded was immense. Starfleet's best scientists had always postulated about the existence of what they had termed to be transwarp space. Basically, a dimension beneath the subspace layer that, if accessed, would allow a starship to travel much faster than anyone had ever thought possible. Unfortunately, up to the Tholian incident, Starfleet's experiments to access this layer of space had been completely unsuccessful. However, now with the Enterprise's data in hand, they believed they finally had the key to making a viable engine system that would transcend the standard warp drive. Meanwhile, a new technological explosion began to take hold within the Federation. The successful refit of the USS Enterprise and its subsequent victory against the entity known as V'ger would mark the dawning of this new technological revolution. The Miranda, Oberth, Constellation, and Parker classes, along with dozens of other starship designs, would all begin to redefine the aging fleet of the Federation. But Starfleet wasn't done yet. With over a decade of development under its belt, by 2278, Starfleet's new transwarp drive system would finally be ready for testing. But the question was, in which starship class? One thing the Enterprise's data from the Tholian incident had made quite clear was that traveling through transwarp space would place a great deal of stress on a starship's space frame, and could cause hull breaches or shearing quite easily. Also, at the time, Starfleet's best and brightest believed that a starship had a better chance of maintaining transwarp if its profile was both long and wider than the aforementioned starship designs. And so, going through its lists of starship classes, they found that only one would fit the bill, that being the Seltzer class. Sitting at a length of 612 meters, the Seltzer class would be designed to be operated by 400 officers and crew members. The Seltzer class was a huge departure from Starfleet's current top-of-the-line starship designs. Originally intended to be a colony-establishing cargo starship design, Having only 5 starships of the class ever produced, the Seltzer class would have a standard safe cruising speed of warp factor 5, with an emergency maximum speed of warp factor 6 for 16-hour increments. All old warp scale, of course. Tactically, the Seltzer class would be surprisingly well armed. With aggression between the Federation and the Klingon Empire continuing to ramp up, as well as the Romulan Star Empire re-emerging onto the galactic stage with a vengeance in the 2260s, Starfleet Command knew it needed to arm all its cargo vessels as a way to dissuade potential raids, and so the Seltzer class would be equipped with both dual phaser emitter banks, as well as photon torpedo launching systems both forward and aft. Shielding for the class would be standard for the era, although the Seltzer class's shield bubble would be significantly altered in shape to effectively protect the class. The Seltzer class would have one main expansive shuttle bay in its aft section, while an industrial fabrication complex with its own cargo bay doors would be located beneath the aft section of the primary hull. Even though the Seltzer class's design was hardly typical of Starfleet Starship Designs, lacking the very sleekness and elegance that Federation citizens everywhere were used to, Starfleet really didn't care, as the designs simply fit the bill for transwarp travel, and if successful, Federation citizens would just have to get used to this new type of design. Of course though, that wouldn't be a problem, as the transwarp drive system incorporated into the Seltzer class would fail to impress. Though able to maintain transwarp for a short period of time, the drive itself would not be successful, and after careful analysis of its test flights, Starfleet's best and brightest would declare that the design of the Seltzer class was actually the problem, reversing a lot of their earlier findings. Chalking the failure up to an untried drive system, the Transwarp development team assured Starfleet Command that the problem was actually due to the starship's design and not the new drive system itself, and that with all the new data they had gathered during the test flight, that they would be able to design a starship class that would not only work for the engine system, but also improve its efficiency, and Starfleet Command bought this sales pitch, hook, line, and eventual sinker. The Transwarp development team would go on to design what would become known as the Excelsior class, and highly publicize its development as the Great Experiment throughout the Federation. In the end though, the Great Experiment would be a complete failure, with the problem not actually being the design of the starship, but the drive system itself. And although Starfleet had learned a lot more about warp travel, which in turn would force a complete rewriting of the warp scale, the highly publicized epic failure of the Great Experiment would leave a blemish on Starfleet Command that it would take years to recover from. As for the Seltzer class, she would remain in service until the mid-24th century, when, like her quiet career, would be decommissioned without any ceremony or fanfare. Created as a colony-establishing starship class, only to be repurposed into a failed transwarp drive testbed, the Seltzer class would lead a quiet life in service to the Federation, earning this class its relatively forgotten yet important place in Starfleet history. Thank you for watching today's episode of Truth or Myth Beta Canon. What do you think of the Seltzer class and the historical narrative that I've created here? Do you want to see more videos like this one? Well, leave your comments in the section below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, hitting that little bell icon so you won't miss a single video we release. Want to help the channel test out its new drive systems on an atypical starship design? Then consider becoming a channel member subscriber or channel patron. Both a major help that allows this channel to purchase resources and 3D models to keep it going. The link to both memberships is in the description below. Thanks again for watching, live long, and prosper.